I just found out my wife's affair with her boss involved a $200 inheritance she secretly siphoned off during our divorce. And now she's suing me for the house I inherited from my late mother, claiming I forged documents to keep her out of our $500 estate. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. The most shocking thing happened when I found out my wife, Lisa, was cheating on me with her boss, and it wasn't just a fling, she'd been sneaking around for months. What's even crazier, it turns out she managed to siphon off $200 from her boss's company, and she did it all behind my back during our divorce process. That's right, while I was trying to get through the emotional mess of splitting everything, she was secretly taking money and planning her escape. It all started with small signs. Lisa's behavior changed gradually, more secretive texts, late nights at work that turned into business trips, and that weird, defensive attitude she'd get when I asked questions. She'd snap at me for nothing, accuse me of being paranoid and say I was imagining things. But I knew her too well. Something was off. I'd catch her deleting messages, hiding her phone, and she'd get furious if I even looked at her screen. One night I decided to do a little digging. I'd had enough of her secrecy. I found a strange email thread, something about transfers, offshore accounts, and meeting with the boss. I couldn't believe my eyes. She was planning more trips, more meetings, and she was clearly hiding something big. When I confronted her, she told me it was all just work stuff, that I was overreacting and that I was being paranoid. She called me a jealous idiot and told me to mind my own business. But I knew better. I could feel it in my gut, that gut feeling you get when you know someone's lying to you. Then came the real bombshell. I discovered that during the divorce, Lisa had secretly siphoned off a huge chunk of money from her boss's company, $200. She'd somehow managed to funnel it into an offshore account, and I only found out because I hired a private investigator after I caught her sneaking around. I was stunned. I kept thinking, how could she do this? How could she betray me like this? I was angry, hurt, and honestly feeling pretty stupid for not seeing it sooner. I mean, I'd always trusted her. We'd been married for 10 years and I thought I knew her inside out. Turns out, she'd been lying to me for months, years, even. The worst part was realizing she'd been planning her escape all along. While I was trying to fix our marriage, she was secretly lining her pockets and plotting her next move. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, financially, and morally. The money she stole was supposed to be part of our future, part of the inheritance from my late mother that I'd been counting on. Instead, she used it to fund her affair and her new life. I couldn't believe how cold she was, how she lied so effortlessly. She told me she loved me, but her actions said something entirely different. And then the realization hit me. She was also planning to sue me for the house I inherited from my mother. She claimed I forged documents to keep her out of our estate, which was a blatant lie. I had the legal papers, the proof that I inherited it legitimately, but she was trying to turn everything against me, to ruin me financially and emotionally. I felt a mixture of rage and despair. How did I get here? How did my wife turn into someone capable of this level of deception? I couldn't just sit back and let her walk away with everything. That's when I started plotting my own revenge, but I'll get to that later. For now, I was just trying to process what I'd found out. It was like my whole world had been turned upside down in just a few days. I used to think I knew her. I thought I knew everything about our life together. Turns out, I only knew what she wanted me to see. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined, and it was going to change everything. After I uncovered the truth about Lisa's affair and her theft, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I kept replaying the moments when I was blind to all her lies, all those subtle signs I ignored. I was furious at myself for trusting her so completely, but mostly I was just devastated. How could the woman I loved and built a life with turn out to be this ruthless, manipulative person? The betrayal cut deep, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies and deception. I knew I had to confront her again, face her and get some answers, even if I already knew most of what I'd find. So I arranged to meet her at a local coffee shop, an attempt to get some closure, or at least some clarity. When she arrived, she looked icy, her usual bitchy smirk plastered on her face like she was already prepared for battle. I felt my blood boil just looking at her. I started with a straightforward question. Lisa, what the hell is going on? Are you really having an affair with your boss? She rolled her eyes, sipped her coffee, and then said, You're just paranoid. You always jump to conclusions. I work late sometimes, that's all. I pressed her, showing her the emails, the offshore account details, the proof I'd gathered. Her face flickered with a flash of panic, then she snapped back with her typical bullshit. That's all just business stuff. You're reading too much into it. You're jealous and you don't want me to succeed. I couldn't believe her lies. She was good at spinning stories, at twisting everything around to make herself look like the victim. I told her I wasn't stupid. I knew about the money she'd stolen, about the affair, about her plans to leave. Her eyes widened, and she started to lie even more, throwing out accusations about how I was controlling, how I never supported her, how I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. She claimed she loved me, that she was just trying to make a better life for herself, and that I was overreacting. It was all bullshit. She didn't love me, not really. She loved the money and the power she thought she had. I could see right through her. She was a bitchy, manipulative woman who used her charm and her lies to get what she wanted. I realized that her whole life was built on deception, and I was just another pawn in her game. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt a mix of rage, sadness, and disgust. I'd given her everything, my love, trust, my hard-earned money, and she repaid me with betrayal. I sat there staring at her, trying to find some ounce of remorse or regret in her eyes, but all I saw was that bitchy smirk. I felt like I was losing my mind, like I'd been duped into thinking I was in a normal marriage when, in reality, I was just part of her elaborate scam. I wanted to lash out, to scream at her, but I kept my composure. Instead, I told her I knew about the money she stole, that I had proof, and that I was done playing her game. I said I was going to get legal advice, figure out how to protect what's mine, and that I'd be damned if she took everything I had left. She scoffed at me, shrugged, and said I was just a jealous loser who couldn't handle her success. That was the last straw. I could see she was resigned to her lies, to her new life, and I realized that trying to save the marriage was pointless. The emotional toll was staggering. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. I'd always wanted a loving, honest relationship, and instead, I'd gotten betrayal on a scale I never thought possible. I kept thinking about the inheritance from my mother, the money I was supposed to pass on to my kids someday, and how Lisa had stolen part of that to fund her affair and her escape. It was all so unfair. I felt like I'd been sucker punched and my world was crumbling around me. But I also knew I had to act. I couldn't let her get away with it. I started planning my next move, deciding I'd fight her in court over the house, over the inheritance, over everything she was trying to steal from me. I was done being the victim. I'd take back what was mine and I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her ruin me. Not without a fight. After that confrontation, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind was racing with thoughts of how to fix this mess, how to protect what little I had left, and how to make her pay for everything she'd done. I knew I had to get legal advice. But more than that, I needed a plan to expose her lies and reclaim my life. The hardest part was realizing how deep her deception went. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe longer, and I'd been completely blind to it. I started digging into the legal side of things. I hired a lawyer who specialized in family law and inheritance disputes. His name was Mark, and he was a no-nonsense guy who immediately saw through Lisa's stories. He told me that I had a solid case to contest the house, especially since I had the original deed, the inheritance papers, and proof that I hadn't forged anything. But the bigger issue was the stolen money. Mark explained that I could potentially sue her for fraud and recover the inheritance I was supposed to get, but it would be a long, complicated process. Still, I was determined. I didn't want her to walk away with a single cent of what was legally mine. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, trying to paint herself as the victim. She'd call me, scream, cry, accuse me of trying to control her, and demand that I drop everything. She even threatened to sue me for the house, claiming I forged documents. I told her flat out that I had the original papers and that I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this. I could hear her bitchy voice on the phone, trying to manipulate me, but I refused to be played anymore. I'd had enough of her lies, enough of her bullshit. I also started to gather evidence of her affair. I hired the private investigator who showed me photos of her with her boss, Mark. They were, of course, doing more than just business. There were explicit photos, text messages, and even videos. It all confirmed what I already suspected. She was sleeping with him regularly and they were planning to run away together. That was the final straw. Seeing those pictures, I felt a mixture of disgust and rage. How dare she betray me like this? How could she be so cold, so calculating? The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I'd trusted her for so long, and she'd used that trust to manipulate me, to steal from me, and to cheat on me. I kept replaying the moments when I thought everything was fine, when I believed in our future. Now I saw everything as a lie. I felt like a fool, like I'd been played by a master manipulator. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I started to think about revenge, not just legal revenge, but something more personal. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd inflicted on me. I wanted her to know what it felt like to be betrayed on every level. I decided that I'd make her regret ever crossing me. I didn't have all the pieces in place yet, but I knew I'd find a way. Maybe it was through exposing her lies publicly, maybe it was by dragging her through the courts, or maybe it was something else. I was still formulating my plan, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. In the meantime, I kept my emotions in check and focused on my legal strategy. I knew I had to be smart, play it cool, gather every piece of evidence I could, and be ready to fight. Lisa's bitchy attitude only made me more determined. I saw through her act now. I saw how she lied so effortlessly, how she twisted every situation to her advantage. I realized I'd been a fool to trust her, but I also understood that I'd be damned if I let her ruin me. I was going to fight for what was mine, and I was going to win. The road ahead was dark, but I was prepared to walk it. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, phone calls, and sleepless nights. I threw myself into the fight, determined to protect what was left of my dignity and my money. Lisa kept up her act, acting innocent when I confronted her, even trying to guilt-trip me into dropping the lawsuit. She'd call me paranoid, jealous, and accuse me of trying to ruin her career. Honestly, her bitchy attitude was almost comforting because it confirmed I was finally seeing her true colors. She was manipulative, selfish, and utterly ruthless. I spent hours reviewing every document, every email, every text message she had sent or received. I had her caught in lies, big ones. She'd claimed she was just doing company work, but I had proof she was meeting her boss in hotel rooms, exchanging explicit texts, and even planning their escape. It was sickening. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been cheating on me, stealing from her boss, and lying to everyone around her. And then there was the money. That $200, $0 she siphoned off during the divorce. It was like a dagger in my back. I kept thinking about how she used that money to fund her affair, to buy her freedom. Meanwhile, I was left with a house I inherited from my mother, which she now wanted to claim as her own. She had the nerve to file a lawsuit claiming I forged documents to keep her out of the estate. I had the original inheritance papers, of course, but her lies were relentless. She was trying to paint me as a fraud, a con artist, just to cover her tracks. I knew I had to fight fire with fire. I gathered all the evidence I could find, bank statements, her emails, the private investigator's photos, and presented them to my lawyer. Mark was impressed with how airtight my case was. He warned me that Lisa was likely to spin even more lies, try to turn the court against me, and maybe even attempt some sort of smear campaign. But I was prepared. I had nothing to hide, and I was ready to expose her for everything she was. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude grew more bitchy and entitled. She'd show up at court dates dressed to impress, throwing tantrums when things didn't go her way. She'd lie about everything, about her affair, about the money, about the divorce. She tried to guilt-trip me by saying I was ruining her life, that I was a controlling asshole who just wanted to keep her down. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I saw through her act now. She was a master at twisting reality, but I was tired of playing her game. One day, I found out she'd been secretly recording our conversations. I was stunned. It was her way of trying to catch me in some mistake, some slip-up she could use against me. I realized she'd do anything to win, even if it meant betraying her own integrity. That was the moment I knew I had to be even more careful. I couldn't let her manipulate me or turn the court against me. In the midst of all this chaos, I also started to think about my emotional health. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. But I also realized I had to stay strong, not just for myself, but for the future I wanted to rebuild. I started to distance myself emotionally from Lisa, refusing to let her lies get to me. I focused on the facts, on the law, and on what I needed to do to protect what was mine. I knew that this fight wasn't just about money or property. It was about dignity, respect, and standing up against someone who had betrayed everything we once shared. I still didn't know exactly how this was going to end, but I was determined to come out on top. Lisa's bitchy attitude and her lies only fueled my resolve. I'd learned that the truth always comes out in the end, and I was going to make sure it did, no matter how much she tried to lie her way out of it. The game was on, and I was ready to win. The court dates kept coming, and with each one I felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. Lisa's lawyer, that bitchy little woman named Corinne, tried every tactic in the book to spin her lies. She claimed I forged documents, manipulated the estate papers, and even accused me of trying to ruin Lisa's career. It was all bullshit, but she knew how to play the court. She was good at twisting facts and making me look like the bad guy. I could see her smirk every time she threw a new lie out, but I didn't let her get to me. I had the proof, and I knew I was in the right. I brought out the original inheritance documents, the bank statements showing the transfer of the stolen $200, $0, and the photos from the private investigator. Seeing everything laid out in court was almost cathartic. Lisa's face paled when confronted with the evidence. Her bitchy attitude disappeared for a moment, replaced by that look of panic she always tried to hide. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was just jealous and trying to control her, but it was clear she was desperate. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed at a level I never thought possible. I'd loved her once, trusted her with my life. And now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get her way. Every time she lied in court, I felt a surge of anger. She was trying to use her bitchy attitude, her tears, her accusations to distract from the truth. But I stayed focused. I knew I had the law on my side, and I was going to fight her every step of the way. Meanwhile, Lisa's attempts to turn the court against me only made me more determined. She tried to paint me as a controlling, jealous husband who was trying to keep her down. She even claimed I forced her to sign papers during the divorce. That was another lie. I had the signed divorce papers, the proof of her signature, and witnesses who could confirm she signed willingly. I knew she was trying to manipulate the court, but I also knew I had the truth on my side. One of the most shocking moments was when Lisa's own texts surfaced, messages where she admitted to the affair, bragged about stealing the money, and even hinted she was planning to leave me. Seeing those messages in court hit her hard. She tried to deny everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. Her bitchy smirk was replaced with a look of pure panic. I saw her desperation, and I knew I was winning. Throughout all this, I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Sad because I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. Relief because I finally had the truth and I was finally fighting back. I realized how much I'd been blinded by her charm, her bitchy attitude, and her lies. Now I was taking control of my life again. I started to see a future where I could rebuild, where I could finally get rid of this nightmare. I also started to think about how I'd finally get revenge, not just legally, but emotionally. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd inflicted on me, to see her realize that her lies and manipulations couldn't last forever. I knew I'd have to be patient, play it smart, and let the law do its work. But deep down, I also wanted her to understand that I wasn't just some fool she could use and discard. I was done being the victim. I was going to come out of this stronger, and she was going to regret ever crossing me. Every day, the court proceedings reinforced what I already knew. Lisa was a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with anything. But justice was on my side, and I was determined to see it done. I wasn't just fighting for my money or my house. I was fighting to reclaim my dignity and to prove that no one, not even a bitchy wife with a knack for lying, could destroy me without consequences. The fight was far from over, but I was ready. I had my evidence, my resolve, and the truth. That's all I needed. The final court hearing felt like the culmination of everything I'd been through. I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, and mentally, but I knew I had to stay strong. Lisa sat across from me, her bitchy smirk replaced by a look of pure panic. She knew her lies had been exposed, her manipulations unraveled. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out the evidence: the original inheritance documents, the offshore account transfers, the private investigator's photos, and the incriminating texts. It was all too much for her to deny now. When it was Lisa's turn to speak, she tried her usual tactics, crying, claiming innocence, accusing me of being controlling and jealous. But her words fell flat. The judge saw right through her. The evidence was undeniable. I could see her bitchy attitude crumbling, her carefully crafted facade cracking under the weight of the truth. She looked like a cornered animal, desperately trying to save face, but it was too late. The judge ruled in my favor on almost every issue. I was awarded full ownership of the house, and Lisa was ordered to pay back the stolen $200, $0 plus interest. The court dismissed her lawsuit claiming I forged documents, and she was ordered to cover my legal costs. It felt like justice, finally. After months of betrayal, lies, and emotional turmoil, I was reclaiming what was rightfully mine. As I packed up my things and left the courthouse, I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of betrayal had lifted, and I was finally free from her bitchy, manipulative grip. I knew I'd have to rebuild my life from scratch, but I was ready. I'd learned some harsh lessons about trust, deception, and the importance of protecting what's yours. Looking back, I realize how much I underestimated her. Lisa was never the woman I thought I married. She was a thief, a liar, and a user. But I also learned that justice can prevail, even against the most cunning manipulator. I've come out of this stronger, more cautious, and more aware of the kind of person I don't want in my life again. Now I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. I've cut ties completely, sold the house, and started over. I don't have much left of what she took, but I do have my dignity, and that's worth more than any money or property. I want anyone reading this to know: don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, protect yourself, and never let someone's bitchy attitude or lies destroy you. Because in the end, honesty and integrity matter most, and if someone betrays that, it's your job to fight back and reclaim your life.